everybody, Dr. Shadi, Ireifej here, board-certified surgeon, chief of specialty, part owner of TrueCare for Pets. Welcome to our podcast. Today we're going to be talking about going into vet school, applying to get into veterinary school. I know a lot of folks out there are interested in pursuing a career in veterinary medicine. A lot of it is sort of nebulous in terms of the application process. People tend to think like, oh, it's hard to get into the medical school, and they don't really know like what class they should take from undergrad. And so today we're lucky enough to have two of our amazing veterinary technicians, Ben and Eric, and they're going to jump on this podcast and tell us about their own experiences with their own veterinary career, what it took to get into vet school, and then of course what their overall career goals are. So thanks for joining us, Ben and Eric. What's up, guys?
What's up?
How's it going?
So we'll start off with, if one of you guys want to start off with your veterinary career kind of up to this point, just where you've been and then how long you've been at TrueCare for Pets for.
Ben, take it off.
So for my veterinary career, I started back in 2011, and it was a very short, 4-month period where I was volunteering at a general practice. But what was cool about it was they had a board certified surgeon come in, and it wasn't very often. It was very, maybe every 2 weeks or once a month or something like that. But he would come in and he would do any sort of surgeries that they needed that they could plan ahead in advance. So typically orthopedic. And it wasn't anything extensive beyond knee surgery, like ECRs, TPLOs. That was about the extent of it. But after that, I went into my undergrad. After undergrad, I had 4 days to move from my college town back home and start on all overnight shifts at a different emergency and critical care hospital. And then I've just been doing that for the past almost 5 years now.
Nice.
So, basically did volunteering right before school, did school, and then went right back into working in specialty and emergency.
And how long have you been at TrueCare for?
I started in September of 2018. Mm-hmm. So I was here before it actually became TrueCare for Pets. It was still Animal Emergency Center. Mm-hmm. And then I started maybe a week or two before Animal Emergency Center closed and TrueCare opened.
Nice. And just for those people who don't know, the orthopedic procedures he mentioned, ECR and TPLO, you can find details of that on my YouTube channel as well. They're both different surgical procedures that we use to treat dogs that have cranial cruciate ligament or ACL tears. So if anybody wants to look at those videos, they're very informative, especially if your dog is about to undergo those procedures. So fantastic. And Eric, how about yourself? What got you to this point in your veterinary career?
Yeah, I started as a volunteer in a general practice when I was in high school. I think unlike Ben, you didn't do general practice at all, did you?
I did no general practice other than what I volunteered.
Yeah, so I started off pretty much just getting my feet wet in the field with cleaning kennels. I was a kennel tech. I didn't do anything but really watch for a while until I was an undergrad. I went to in Northern California. There was a veterinary clinic, and there was a pharmacy technician position, and I actually started doing that for a couple of years. So all I really did was fill medication, which was really cool because it's something that I think is relatively important in veterinary medicine. Knowing what drugs do what. I think it probably wasn't until my senior year at college that I started doing overnights as an emergency tech. And then as soon as I finished, I moved here and pretty much started working for TrueCare. That was last year. So I've been here for almost a year.
Nice. Great. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think a lot of people out there who are now veterinarians or undergoing the process have pretty similar career paths. I did a similar thing where I began as a volunteer at a GP, general practitioner, and then from there got my various animal experiences for veterinary school. Then once I got in and just sort of learned the process from there, had no idea they even had specialists until I was 2 years into vet school. And then from there became a surgeon, and there you go. So very, very interesting. And so we love these two guys. They're fantastic technicians, and the veterinary schools are going to be very lucky to have them. And the field is going to benefit greatly from their services once they become veterinarians for sure. So I guess I'll have to ask then, of course, what makes you want to transition from being licensed veterinary technicians to becoming doctors of veterinary medicine?
I think a lot of it has to do with just, at least for me, it's been more of a learning venture in that, going through school and I have my undergrad, and that isn't quite enough. There's this sort of like search for wanting to know more. And, you only learn so much in school. You only learn so much in tech school. Also with veterinary school, you're only going to learn so much before you need to become a specialist or you choose to go into a certain field. Yeah, it's pretty much just been wanting to learn more, wanting to get kind of just more hands-on with a certain specialty. So like for me, I plan on doing either rehabilitation or internal medicine. And then
rehab, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Why rehab?
It's basically like physical therapy for animals. And if I didn't get into veterinary school, that was the path that I was going to choose, was being a human physical therapist.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a different sort of medicine that you're practicing. And that's what I kind of like, is you're not so much focused on the actual medicine aspect. You're still learning physiology. You're still learning anatomy. You're still learning all the biochemistry, because that's still playing a role in everything that you're doing. It's just taking a different aspect on medicine, and you're not so much prescribing medicine. You're more so doing like the exercises needed to rehab whatever it is, your back, your joints. And that's the other part about it, is it's not just limited to orthopedic patients or any sort of surgical patients. Like in human medicine, they do physical therapy and they do massage therapy for people who have renal and lymph insufficiency. So their kidneys don't work well, or their lymph systems aren't able to move around the lymph in the body well enough. And so a lot of that, people go to physical therapy, they go to massage therapists, they go and get other forms of help to help along with that sort of process.
And if anybody listening is not familiar with physical therapy for dogs or canine feline rehabilitators, it's a huge niche, and it's been this way for I would say probably about a decade, maybe a little bit longer. But now especially, if there's one area that for sure would be a very successful business venture, is starting your own physical therapy center for dogs and cats.
Definitely.
And I don't know if is there a residency for that, or is it certification?
It's a certification. I know of one. It's not through the Colorado State University, but it's in the same town of Fort Collins. They do a rehabilitationist certification, and they also do it for technicians. So if you are a technician and you want to get a rehab certification, they have that for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. So we do need more rehab out there. And for any client that's had a dog or cat, most of the time dogs, but a dog or cat who's undergone major surgery and needs physical therapy, it can be a lifesaver. It really, they do the work for you. They're professionals. The animals, these pets love going to the rehab centers. They really connect with the trained individuals in those facilities, as well as it gets kind of most of the work off of the back of the owners. So it's almost like a doggy daycare.
Yeah, and a lot of them do typically function as a doggy daycare, but on top of that, you're getting your dog rehab, you're getting them physical therapy, you're getting them pain management, all included in this same cost.
And they'll have laser therapy there, Chinese herbal medicine, they'll do acupuncture as well. So it's not just physical therapy. And so it's a whole network. So fantastic. Good for you. Cool. So Eric, what made you want to go into veterinary school?
I'm kind of one of those cases that just like I knew as a kid that I wanted to be a veterinarian. I think you probably hear that a lot, like, oh, I wanted to be a veterinarian as a kid. I wanted to be a veterinarian as a kid. And I'm like, yeah. And then they work for a day and they're like, oh shit, I don't want to do this. I kind of like always was really fascinated by the field. I also kind of always really was interested in medicine, but I was like always that kid at like a party that was like talking to the dogs instead of the people. It was kind of like one of those things where like you put the two together and it's like, oh, I'm going to be a veterinarian. As far as like specializing stuff, I don't think that the ER is going to be for me, and general practice definitely isn't for me. So I'm kind of hoping to get a residency in ophthalmology. That's
nice.
I took a physiology course in undergrad, and when we got to the physiology and anatomy of the eyes, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And it was like a comparative, because I got my degree in zoology, so it was like we saw all the different species to compare them to, and I was like, this is so cool. The eye, and like the evolution of the eye, and like so many different species, so interesting. Diseases of the eye are so interesting.
What's cool is I mean, especially in LA, there's only a handful of ophthalmologists, but on top of that, outside of California, you have a very small field of ophthalmology. So
that's why I heard like getting a residency in ophthalmology is relatively difficult. Yeah. So I'm kind of just like, not holding my breath yet. And I'll see, like, I think that, even though I know you said like you're your passion was kind of like rehab and it maybe internal medicine at this point. But I've been told so many times by veterinarians and like even yourself, Dr. Shadi, you said this, keep your mind open because you're going to take courses in veterinary school that are going to like change the way that you feel about certain topics. Yeah. And you might find something interesting that you didn't know you had a passion for, or vice versa. So I'm kind of trying to like just keep my mind open at this point, like to anything maybe.
Yeah, and again, for folks who don't know how this works in the field, you go to veterinary school, you become a doctor of veterinary medicine, and then you're allowed to start practicing. You have the option of specializing, so you can choose a field like surgery, neurology, ophthalmology, dermatology, cardiology that you want to specialize in, and then that requires, of course, more training. There's less positions out there, which means the application process is more intense. So you've got to be, some of the brightest and best of the field to get into these programs. So once you get into these programs, of course, you're on a track. It's over somewhere between 2 and 4 years, depending on the residency program, and then you can specialize. So ophthalmology certainly is one of the most difficult ones. There's only a handful of programs out there, and some don't even take people every year. It's like every other year. Internal medicine is a little bit, I'll say easier with an asterisk, because no residency is easy to achieve. But at least there's more positions out there in the U.S. that you can go for. So that's fantastic, and a lot of. This type of talk, 15, 20 years ago of being a veterinary student and knowing that you want to specialize was rare back then. Now, veterinary applicants know about specialization, and so most people are like you guys, that they have an idea of what they want to specialize in. You don't have to specialize, but they go into it knowing what they want to do, at least in the beginning. I had no idea, and most of my classmates didn't, because specialty was still relatively new. It wasn't something that you even thought about. You just wanted to get into vet school and become a veterinarian. But now it's a lot more, the process seems to be more thought out, which is really cool. Yeah. It's really cool.
I guess there's something to be said about just like kind of looking at the short-term goal of it and being like, let's just get through first term of vet school first. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably, but I think, you're right. Like it's nice to know like a long-term plan, even if that plan changes along the way. But I know that there's a lot of people that are like, don't even just think about first term, or just think about moving and getting situated before getting involved in like what you're going to do in 6 years from now.
Yeah. Even getting in is like a giant feat, and having to like plan out how you're going to do your applications and get your letters of recommendation and what classes you have, like that is a giant feat in itself. And like,
how many times did you apply? Are we allowed to talk about that? Are we talking about that?
Yeah. Let's jump right in. No, let's talk about it. So let's go into the application process itself and what these guys had to do to get to where they're going. And their veterinary colleges actually are in very unique locations. A lot of you folks out there probably don't even know that exist, but many veterinarians out there know very well they exist. So go for it. What was the application process like?
My very first application was, I started in my super senior year. I took a 5th year in my undergrad, and I started doing my application then, and that was 2013. And when I started my application, I started, checking off schools I wanted to apply to, and this is all online, keep in mind. So, you log in, you make your, your username, your password, and all that. And then they have you choose the schools that you want to apply to, and then they have you fill out your basic biological info, your parents' info, all of that. Once it gets to the actual nitty-gritty of the schools and the classes you want to take, I had a huge panic attack because I didn't meet nearly half of the requirements for classes. But I mean, it was my last year of school, so I'm still going to meet some of those classes. But even by the time I graduated, I was still missing a full year of organic chemistry. I was missing a full year of physics. I still needed to retake a physics class that I had failed prior years. So it was a giant just process of going through. And this year was my third full attempt, because that year, 2013, I didn't even finish the application. I opened it, had a panic attack, and I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to finish my degree. I'm going to get the rest of my undergrads done, and I'll apply when I'm done. So I did 3 full application cycles, 3.5 with the first application not even fully complete.
Yeah. And so what did you get into? What program?
So I applied this year. I applied to a couple schools, and I got interviews for Ross University, and that's in the Caribbean on the island of St. Kitts. And then I also got an interview for University of Glasgow in Scotland. What was very unique about those schools is that they made it so that way you did not have to travel there for the interviews. And Ross University did a Skype interview, and University of Glasgow actually went to my undergrad school, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, to do their interview process. So I got to take this little mini vacation and go relive my alma mater for undergrad, and it was amazing. You know, you still remember the school, you still remember the area. You have a little mini vacation, you do your interview, and I heard back from them 6 days later that I got accepted.
Nice. That's where you're going.
Yeah.
That's it. And when do you start?
School starts September 16th, and I will be moving there probably the first or second week of September.
Fantastic. So would you think that the hardest part of the application process for you specifically was the prerequisite courses?
Oh, no. For me, it was writing my essays because I'm a terrible writer. I'm an awful writer. So I had to start early. I started this year. I started when the applications opened in May. Or, well, last year, I should say. I started doing everything. And what's nice is they keep rolling over the applications. So if you finished everything and you send in your official transcripts, they keep that. So that way, if you don't get in one year and you're applying the next year, it just rolls over. Nice. So that's
Smart.
what was nice, and it just kind of like rolled over and made it really easy to continue doing the application process.
Are you talking about the VMCA?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that. That was convenient.
Yeah, and honestly, that's what made me keep applying was the fact that I didn't have to keep sending in these transcripts, because I had like 4 different community colleges that I went to that I needed to get transcripts from. So it was, and one of them was in San Luis Obispo, which is about 3-hour drive from Studio City here. So it was kind of it was a little bit much at the first application trying to get all the transcripts just sent in on time.
Not just sending them in too, but I remember the like entering your grades.
Oh yes,
portion, so that they not, because they don't even look at your transcripts, I think, until they're probably considering you. But while they're screening, they look at what you put in manually.
Yes,
and that is brutal. That takes forever. And
then on top of that, you have to like guesstimate what your GPA is.
Oh yeah, and they won't do it for you. So you got to like pull out all the calculator and do all the, and each school's credits are different, whether you're on the quarter system or the semester system. I mean, yeah, it just, that whole process takes forever. And then there's like 3 different GPAs that they look at, and you have to calculate it yourself. There's like a overall GPA, there's your science-based GPA, there's your last 45 GPA, there's your last 45, so there's 4, then there's your last 45 science-based GPA.
Yeah.
So
45 units.
45 units, yeah.
Wow, that's very different than when I applied.
Yeah.
Sure. No. But I'll tell. But we had different difficulties. I'll tell you about. So what the process for you, Eric? What do you find was the most difficult part of the process, and where are you going for vet school?
So the most difficult process for me was actually the prereqs. The essays portion, I kind of wrote as I went. I kind of just. So that way, yeah, I never had a difficulty just like typing out. That was fine. The essays were fine. It was the prerequisites, and my grades the first time around weren't fantastic. I was holding about a 3.0 when I graduated with my zoology degree. It's just not nearly competitive enough. So I wound up going back to community college after I got my degree, and retook like 6 of my animal science courses, and physiology. I retook basic chem. I retook organic chem. Yeah. I retook calculus just because. And then I just aced everything the second time around when I knew that I wanted to be a veterinarian. So I did get into a program also my 3rd year. It took me 3 times to apply as well. I got into the St. George's School of Veterinary Medicine in the Caribbean. It's on an island called Grenada. And I start in August, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations, guys. That's absolutely fantastic. When I was applying for vet school, we had the computers weren't a big thing really yet, so things were not as smooth as now. So you'd apply to as many vet schools as you could, because the more you apply to, the better your chances. And it was so difficult to get in, and everything was on paper. And so you had about a pile. Let's say you wanted to apply to 20 different vet schools, which we did. You'd have a pile of 20 manila envelopes with every single piece of information: your essay, your transcripts, which were supposed to be sealed, and whatever else. Your letters of recommendation sealed, and of course the whole application process. And every vet school had their own application, and some had even a supplementary application.
Yeah, they still do that.
Okay, so you had so each manila envelope had 5 to 7 sheets of paper. That you printed and then wrote out you filled in the blanks.
And you just mailed it back?
You mailed and you're hoping between going to the post office. You might as well
20 carrier pigeons flying out to all your different schools.
You're hoping that the post office person you're dealing with was in a good mood that day and they wouldn't screw up your mailing. And then you send them off. And then B, you're hoping that they actually got received and went to the right office. And you wouldn't know. That's it. They were gone.
So and the EMCA website didn't exist?
They had it, and that's where you got your list of. That's where they had the list of vet schools. That's where they had the requirements for each veterinary college. But honestly, we didn't really use the website much. We used the book. So VMKIS, right?
Yeah.
So VMCAS, they had this book. It's maybe 180 pages, 120 pages, like green book. At least that's the one that I used. And every 2 pages had one veterinary school's information, their average GPA, the courses they required, a little bit about the school, and you went based on that book. And then if you didn't get in that year, you did the whole process over again with 20 envelopes, and you'd reorder the book if it was a new edition out, and you would do it all again. And
so they actually still made the book. Year. Did you use it?
No.
So I actually have the book. every year I bought the book. Every page was a veterinary school. Yeah. It told you all the requirements. It told you all about the school. So I actually bought the book 3 years of that book. But on the website, it didn't tell you any of that information. It only was a hub for your application.
And I think because it took me twice before I got into vet school, and I think it just started becoming more of an online process then, but it was nowhere near streamlined. It was a nightmare anyway. And I think when we had the book, at least when I applied, it didn't mention any of the schools outside the U.S.
Oh yeah, the book does now.
It does now, and so later editions included Canada and wherever else, but we didn't have it, and so I actually didn't know those schools existed until somebody told you. And so my second year, I applied to the Caribbean. I applied to Canada. And that's how I found out about them. But.
Well, I found out about the international schools. I was a part of the Animal Science Club at Cal Poly for a very short period of time before I got carried away with classes and all that. But they had people come from. It was one of the schools in Canada. I want to say it was Guelph. They had a representative come from there. They had a representative come from the Royal Veterinary College in London, and they also had someone come from University of Glasgow. So that's how I found out about these programs. And then also my school had a deal with the Animal Science Department and University of Glasgow, where as a third-year student, or fourth year for that matter, because I transferred in, if you applied and you got whatever the award was, or you basically applied for this program, and your next year in school was at University of Glasgow, and after your first year at University of Glasgow, you finished your bachelor's. So some universities have programs set up with international schools, so that way they get more students coming out.
St. George's is doing that as well. Yeah, St. George's is doing that as well. It's like a 5 and a 6 year program, because not only will you finish and get your bachelor's, but you kind of will automatically start your path to the DVM. So they're doing that too, and I think it's to probably draw attention to their school. Because it's they're doing that as well.
So for our listeners there, veterinary schools require an undergraduate degree, and so that's usually 4 years. And obviously, it can take longer. It takes longer for you to graduate from your undergrad, and then vet school itself is 4 years. And so, when you guys hear about these two gentlemen taking extra years of education, you're looking at 8 years minimum before you're a general practitioner. If you want to specialize, like we mentioned earlier, you're looking at several more years, depending on how much of a rock star you are. So keep that in mind. This whole process, if you have intentions of maybe like having a family, having kids, that kind of thing, that plays a role in all of this. And so just add up the number of years these guys had to go through to get to the point they are at now, and then they still have a lot more years to go. Yeah. So it's a rigorous process, definitely fulfilling, but just keep that in mind when you're planning out your life. So then we'll finish off with maybe some advice. If you guys, knowing what you know now, and having gone through the process, and I'll jump in as well, what advice would you have for the youngsters out there that are going to be following your footsteps? Maybe we have some high school listeners, maybe even younger, some undergrad listeners that are thinking about the process. How would you advise your younger self?
I would honestly say get as much different animal experience as possible, because I didn't have a very good GPA when I finished school. Like my complete undergrad, doing my extra year of organic chemistry, doing my extra year of physics, I ended up with a 3.2, which is, it's neither here nor there. It's not terribly competitive, but it's not awful. It's better than a 3.0, but it's not a 3.5. So I didn't get in based off of my grades. I know that for a fact. I got in because I have a minor in biology. I also have a minor in poultry management. My class is at Cal Poly. Yeah, poultry management. Wow. I mean, most of my classes at Cal Poly were all poultry based.
I forgot you went this
wow. Yeah, so I mean, and that's just kind of how it played out with Cal Poly.
Huge agricultural school.
It is. And and what's nice about it is they also give you other classes to do animal stuff with. So like I worked with horses, I worked with pigs, I worked with chickens, I worked with goats, I worked with sheep. Like I have a whole variety of animals that I worked with, but most of my small animal hours came from working strictly in emergency and specialty. And that's where most of my knowledge base comes from, beyond what came from undergrad. But that's where most of my technical skills came from. That's where a lot of my just overall nursing knowledge came from, is getting in the field, getting hands-on experience. But also, you have a sort of background knowledge of all these other animals that you're working with and how they kind of are similar. So my advice is definitely get as much experience as you can working with other animals. Even exotics are something to be noted. Mm-hmm. Working with turtles, working with snakes, working with any sort of reptile, they're a completely different medicine and they require a more extensive care. Mm-hmm. So, definitely diversity amongst animals and getting that experience in is.
And how about you, Eric? What advice would you have for your younger self?
I mean, that's a really good point too, is just getting a bunch of different experiences. So definitely that. Also, like, make sure this is 100% what you want to do, I think, before you get involved in
definitely.
it. This is a really rough field. It's hard physically, it's hard emotionally. Sometimes you're going to see things that are going to keep you up forever, that you're not going to have make sure that you're in a good place emotionally for this field as well.
Yeah,
but I think, like, if I were to redo this whole thing, I would have gone to community college for the first 2 years.
That's what I did.
Is that what you did?
That's what I did.
I went to undergrad for when you get your bachelor's, the first 2 years you're taking your undergraduate classes, which is basically everything you just did in high school. History and your physical education, and like I took a class. Yeah, English. I had to take a class on like the history of rock and roll. Cool, yeah, definitely. But like I don't need to be paying top dollar for that. Mm-hmm. So I would have gone to community college for my first 2 years. I think I would have been a little bit in a more mature mindset, and then maybe even gotten into a more prestigious school. I don't know. I was very happy with where I went to school, but I'm just saying, like, I think that your mindset is different at 20 than it is at 18. So if I were to do this again, I probably would have saved a couple bucks, gone to community college, gotten good grades, and then transferred to wherever I wanted to. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, great. And so I'll add on to that. The variety of animal experience is definitely a valuable thing. A lot of vet schools want to see that you have a variety of animal experiences. Most people end up doing dogs and cats, which are what we mean when we say small animals. Otherwise, other folks are into equine, horses, but those are pretty easy and they're fairly common. You want to get the I'll say weird animals, but just the less thought of, so
common.
Yeah, so zoo animals, pigs, exotics, chickens, this type of thing. And those positions are going to be by far probably volunteer. It's going to be very hard to find a paying position for that. And you're looking at doing that for like a few weeks or a summer or something. These aren't things you're doing for years when you're getting these sort of animal experiences that are not your conventional everyday dogging, cat or horse type experience. So,
and then on top of that, if you're considering going to veterinary school and you have no idea what animal you want to work with, large animal is by far a huge field that needs veterinarians, especially in the Midwest where, that's where most of the agriculture is. The veterinarians out there are starting to dwindle down just because they're starting to retire. And so the demand for veterinarians who will come out and birth a calf at midnight in the middle of a blizzard in Nebraska on like Christmas, whatever the imagination or whatever you can think of, those are what are definitely needed right now.
Is the demand in this field rising?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yes.
when you look at because everybody's flocking to like major cities. They want to be on the coast, and and it's cool, and it's obviously it's busy. It's more satisfying professionally speaking, financially speaking. So no one's doing the mixed practice anymore, which is what you tend to do when you're in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
And then other I'll say less savory positions like taking care of food animals. Those are tough. They're tough. You're dealing more with the production aspect than you are with actual veterinary care, and it can be rough for you. And then of course there's other facilities you can get into. You can get into pharmaceuticals. You can go into research. You can get into government work as a veterinarian. So there's other less thought of positions that you can.
And you could also do teaching, which is something that I've thought of. A lot of my teachers in school were DVMs and PhDs.
Right. And then to Eric's advice, your undergraduate credentials are very, very important. You're looking at getting as high of a GPA as you can. You want to try and take all the prerequisite courses that you can. You're going to be asked for, I think, at least 3 letters of recommendation.
Minimum
of 3. So you need to be tight with a handful of professors that get to know you and really like you, and they know how hardworking you are and how diligent you are. And so getting your undergrad stuff in check, if it means going to community college first and foremost, then do it. If it takes you a little longer to get through undergrad, but you're going to come out being a more mature person with a stronger GPA, more classes under your belt, stronger letters of recommendation, a better GRE score, then you do it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
And so I guess my advice would be I would actually look up the VMCAS website or get that book, especially if you're in high school or getting into undergrad, because you want to see what your aim is. You want to see what your goal GPA is, what number of hours of veterinary medicine you want, what kind of experiences they want you to have. Every school is slightly different, and some make it just impossible for you to get in because you just don't have time to take those courses. And so you want to try and plan ahead for those requirements. I would say build up your credentials, your CV to aim for those goals. If you know where to aim for, then you can now plan ahead. And you can
start early.
Start early.
Yeah, start that application cycle early. He's right; it's daunting. If you start too late and you open it up, you're gonna not finish that cycle. There's no way.
Yeah.
And Dr. Shadi's right. Like each school. There was a school. Okay, I thought for sure I was going to be applying to the University of Florida, and then they randomly wanted like some course in like animal nutrition, which I didn't take. You probably took because you went to Cal Poly. That was like the one class I did not take, and I don't think most of the other veterinary schools require that course.
Right.
They offered it as an elective, but it was a starred course, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not applying to the University of Florida because I didn't plan it out. So plan it out.
And then also look at the schools and see which one, like, I'm not saying that you can't get into any school that you want. Especially if you put your mind to it, you put your mind to school, you put it school first, you get good grades, you're most likely going to get into whatever school you want. But I'll tell you right now, I applied to UC Davis all 3 times, and I did not get in a single time. And I'm from California. I have residency here. I have a 3.2, but, sometimes residency isn't going to be enough. Your letters of recommendation aren't going to be enough. Sometimes your GRE scores are not going to be enough. Your entire application just might not be competitive enough.
I didn't even apply to Davis.
Exactly.
Neither of the 3 years, and it's also my school.
So look at the schools, see which ones you can most likely get into, and don't bother with like UC Davis or Cornell. Not saying that they're bad schools, but they're one of the top 2 schools. It's usually them 2 and Colorado rank in the top 3 every year. So
on each school's website, you can look at their previous stats of like what the average student is getting and their demographic and this and that. And it's like if you have
the Ventura book has that.
They do.
At least they did when I had the book.
If the average student has like an overall GPA of like a 3.95 and you have like a 2.9, I mean, is there a possibility that you have a shot in the dark because you're like some exceptional person or whatever. Yeah, it's always possible. I personally am not going to waste all my money and time on that school.
Exactly. Like my second year, I applied to 14 different schools, and I got my 2 interviews with Ross University and University of Glasgow. So no U.S. school accepted me all 3 years. None of them gave me an interview. None of them gave me nothing. So I'm just saying, don't get so fixated on your top school. Open your mind to other schools. Open your mind to going out of country, there's good doctors at all of these schools. There's good doctors coming from the less prestigious schools, and I've met bad doctors coming from the top schools. I think you're going to get a good education. It's going to be what you make of it. Exactly.
I think more so.
Absolutely.
You agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. It's like anything else. This profession is, it's enormous in terms of the amount of knowledge, not to mention dealing with so many different species, and you're going to be tested on all those species when you try to finally get your veterinary degree, right?
Yeah.
So there's no way 4 years, you're going to learn every single disease process for every single species.
Yeah.
You're going to learn as much as you can. And then when you get out, your goal is going to be to take the knowledge that you have, that strong foundation, and now specialize it into whatever it is you're going to pursue. So 100%. These vet schools, they are all fantastic. Sure, they're rated and fine. So is everything else. But you need to get in there and get the degree.
Exactly.
Learn as much as you can and then come out swinging.
Yeah.
Good. Well, so I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everybody out there and say thank you so much, Eric and Ben. You guys have been fantastic. I hope this information helps you guys out there who are thinking about a career in veterinary medicine. It is not all meant to deter you, but just to sort of give you the tools that you need to be fully equipped so that when you do apply, you're going to be the strongest candidate possible. Time is precious, and a lot of times if you make some pretty big errors in your application process, it's very hard to correct those things. So if you can get it done right the first time, that's the way to do it. Thank you so much, everybody. This is Dr. Shadi Ireifej, board-certified surgeon, chief of specialty, part owner of TrueCare for Pets, Studio City, Los Angeles, California. Eric, Ben, thank you guys so much for being part of this podcast.
Thanks for having me.